Hello, friends. This is the Alphalist Podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the Alphalist Podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for the company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the Alphalist Podcast. I am your host, Toby, and my guest today is from good old Germany, from Berlin. And it's a bit unusual because he runs more or less PLG SaaS company that has a Series B funding of over in total 32 million, I think, funded by companies like Excel, Bellerton, very, very good and well-known VCs. And it's Hannes Lenke. And Hannes is building a code-first synthetic monitoring for modern DevOps. Hannes, did I introduce you properly?
Yes, you did. Tobias, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being my guest. And yeah, as for many, let's say, SaaS companies, you're technical, but you're still the CEO. Was that always the case, or were you also sometimes deep in the trenches, or are you still deep in the trenches?
I wouldn't say I'm deep in the trenches still, right? So I'm deeply involved in product decisions, of course, right? And probably also all kind of decisions in the company, right? So it comes to marketing, sales, etc. But I'm not writing code anymore. Besides, maybe Easter and Christmas, we're writing some scripts, etc. But I'm not committing code to our production repository.
Okay, that sounds just about healthy. And what did you code? Let's say on Easter.
I improved our CLI, right? So we have a command line interface, which is enabling what we will talk about, right? So monitoring as code. And, I saw the need to improve it a bit, by adding some features around environment variables, etc. So, I thought I'd give it a go and was quite successful there.
And your team didn't hate you for that?
They for a time thought about it for some minutes, and then did the code review and found lots of things to improve. Right, so I'm not a professional coder anymore, I would say. Right.
I would say I'm kind of a GPT coder these days. So I even don't use Copilot. I just use GPT.
I use Copilot a lot. Copilot helps a lot, right? So we're writing scripts on the side, right? So for our accounting, then I'm using Copilot, and I'm a huge fan of Copilot.
Right, just like bootstrapping, right? For bootstrapping,
yes,
and then also improving.
Also for for people like us who are not really coding 24/7 anymore, right? So it really helps to get started.
Absolutely. So you have a team of around 40 people, so that's not really big, and you collected a huge amount of funding. What do you do with all that money with such a small team?
That's a great question, right? So obviously we want to grow. Right. And we want to grow faster. Right. So that's why we took some money. And growing faster, we have pretty much two initiatives that we're pushing currently. One is expanding into the US. So we see 80% of our revenue is coming from the US currently. Also almost 80% of the customers. So as a team with roots in Europe, so we're 100% remote team, and actually my team members are sitting in 14 countries worldwide already, and I already have some or had some people in the US, but now we have a larger team in the US helping customers and selling to customers. And the other initiative is we're just getting started on the product, so we want to accomplish more there and hiring engineers there at the moment.
And hiring a lot of people or just great people?
Great people, right? So the focus is really on great people. That's a really good question, right? So right now, it's not about scale in terms of team size. I think it's really important to find the right people and get the right people on board for the size of Checkly, also where we are, frankly, in the market currently, right? So we're a Series B company. We are working with very innovative teams in smaller startups, but also in larger enterprises. And you need people on board who understand the needs of, frankly, both sides and who are experienced enough to get their hands dirty, execute fast.
Okay.
So
sounds good. Like a good pitch. Apply now. So then a great team and a nice skyscraper office in New York, I guess. Then that's the answer, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's skyscraper yet, but in New York we opened an office in August. It's at Union Square, so I think it's very central. Everyone knows Union Square, and are there with currently I think 5 people, and looking to expand there.
Great. Maybe before we talk more about your product and what you're actually doing, let's talk a bit about your experience as a geek or nerd. Like, what is how did you get into computing and why do you do that? Like, why do you do what you do?
All right, that's a great question. Sometimes I don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing, but I can tell you, how I'm got here, pretty much, right? So I started as a child. I was born in Eastern Germany, right? So and when the wall came down, my parents decided, okay, we need a computer for the kids so that they can play some games. So they bought us a 486, I think was my first machine. So we started to play games. And after some years, I recognized that there, the possibility to write or to spin up your own website. So I started to do that. I think I hosted it on Lycos, or there was a service to host that, but this is a while ago, right? So I got into HTML and JavaScript, and started to develop my first website. Still playing lots of games on the side, Age of Empires and browser games, browser games like Planetarion. That was a game that was, I think. The first season was 2000 or so. So I got in there quite early, and then they had scaling problems and, needed to add more Apache servers to their stack, etc. I did that excessively. And what I did there is also thinking about automation, frankly, right? So, I mean, there, especially in these browser games, there were tedious tasks that you had to do every day. So I thought about, hey, how could I apply the knowledge that I gained before at school and tinkering around to that browser game? And this was the first time I really started to automate a browser. Back then, with Delphi, right? So the programming language back then, and the knowledge I had learning Pascal and Turbo Pascal at school, and was quite an experience, I would say. And
so
I think we
you literally ended up in QA or coming up with QA testing tools because you wanted to automate a browser.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so an interesting piece here is, looking back at your life, now being, almost 40, what is it? What sticks? And back then I did automation, right? So browser automation, right? Yeah. And it was a good time. And but what I also was interested in is in business, right? So actually, I had a neighbor telling me about the possibility to trade stocks, and he taught me as a 14 or 15 years old, how to trade stocks, right? Before the .com bubble bursted, right? And so I started to trade stocks in the name of my mom, and made some money on the side as a kid, right? It was quite fun. So I was always interested in business, and then also programming. And when I ended up doing my high school exam, the question was, what's next here, right? So am I going to study business computing, or is it, or am I going to study computing or business administration? And in the end, I decided to go into business computing, right? And really combine the both sides, right? And that's what I did in 2006 and 7, etc. And then ended up as a developer for a larger enterprise in Hamburg. Actually, worked on quite some enterprise systems there. So product lifecycle management systems connected to SAP, and did that for a while. That was quite fun because the product lifecycle management system was made to actually help us manufacturing VIP jets, so really, really large jets, so 747s for Chikes, etc. Oh. And they needed to have a system which is telling them how to manufacture the interior, pretty much. And that's what I worked on for a while, and then recognized that I'm the least patient German on the planet, and that I need to change something. And this was 2010, where I founded my first business, which was called Test Object. And yeah, that was also about automation. Actually, we started Test Object thinking about, okay, how could we apply AI to mobile testing back then, right? So we started to work on that for 2 years, and had read scientific papers, try to understand, okay, what is this AI capable of doing, and applied it to mobile testing in a way that we try to recognize buttons on your apps, etc. There wasn't really good automation back then, and then so all the tools which are there nowadays weren't really there. So we pretty much looked at the screen, grabbed the screen, and try to recognize buttons, and transform what we've recognized from manual tests to automated tests with JavaScript. And this is what we did for 2 years, and then nearly ran out of money in the end, because it was quite a hard problem to solve. And the truth is, it's still not solved, right? So there's no AI really doing test automation at scale, even more than 10 years later. So we ran out of money, but recognized our customers ask us for these mobile devices that we had, in a closet, right, connected to the internet. And they pretty much said, hey, okay, I mean, we need to have access to this newest iPhone device, and we don't have that in our office. So what we did is we went ahead and said, okay, maybe we can solve that, and wrote some software which enabled us to give these devices remotely to customers, and help them to have access to these devices. And then it took off. Then we saw more customers, more revenue, etc.
Yeah, very simple case. Thanks for this overview. And as soon as I come up with a shirt, I am part of the marquee tag generation. I'll send one to you, as you might know that as well from your past.
Yep.
So really, really interesting, because you were kind of from business more, or always had that business exposure, right? Which for many techies, let's call it without bad feelings, is not the case, right? Like you, at a certain point, have to teach yourself, like, hey, this is how business works, and you kind of come from tech through this, through your intrinsic motivation, and not so much to business. But yeah, fascinating. And you then sold the company to Source Labs, right?
Right. That happened in 2016. So we sold the company to Source Labs, which was a cloud testing or browser testing provider back then. They're from San Francisco, and they saw the need for to add mobile testing to their stack, and there was a good fit between the companies in the end and between the teams. We used the same technologies, and we had similar or sometimes the same customers, right? So with my business, I helped Walmart to do their mobile testing and several others. So Source Labs recognized us as a Berlin-based team back then. It wasn't was not a remote team. It was 100% Berlin-based team. They recognized us and thought like, hey, this is a cool technology. Maybe we need to add that. So we started the conversations actually in 2015, and then it took them a year to acquire us.
Okay, cool. So you started off already back then with something quite international, just from the roots of Berlin, right? Was it harder back then? Like, I mean, now looking at like all the tools, accessibility of payment solutions, etc. Like, how was it back then for like a German Berlin-based company to scale globally?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, right? So in the end, TestObject was a mobile testing tool, and mobile testing, we served mostly QA, so quality assurance people. But this is international, right? So the market is an international market. So kind of the market pulled us always, to think globally. And obviously, when we started in 2010, we thought we could, bill in euros and on the website, and the customers kept asking us if we could, not send them invoices, but accept credit cards and bill them in US dollars. So we thought about that problem and thought about how to solve that problem. And back then, Stripe wasn't huge. So we decided to go with Braintree payments back then, and I think several other solutions. So it was a hassle really to get accepted by the payment providers, by the US payment providers as a startup. But we did so, and then we were able to accept pretty much the payments, and then over time more customers came from the US, and more customers asked us about larger scale solutions. So we started also to sell to the US with a sales team back then.
I even remember that time when, I don't know, Rocket Internet had a PSP, right? Like they also built a competitor to Stripe, like just to be acquired by Stripe, which didn't work out back then. It was like really crazy, right? Like if you look back, like it all seems so obvious, right? That like it will all lead to Stripe and maybe a few others.
Yeah, well, but I think it wasn't obvious, right? So I mean, Stripe's success is hard work in the end, right? Yeah. So there were lots of solutions on the market, right? And it wasn't the easiest answer wasn't to use Stripe because everyone is using that. Nowadays it is, right? So most of the software as a service tools are using Stripe, but back then, there were plenty of solutions on the market, and some had a good API, others did not, and in the end, we went for Braintree payments. Yes.
And now, like a few years later, you obviously went straight away to Stripe, and you did all the things that you did wrong back then now absolutely correctly.
100%.
100%. So how did you start your second business? Like, was it like straight away obvious that what you want to do, and that this is like a niche? Maybe also tell us a bit more about the niche. Niche. And then let's deep dive a bit, like what your learnings were and which you straight away applied.
Yes. I mean, what we do exactly is we pretty much help you to get a very clear signal when your APIs or your website is down, right? So So we're executing your own code at scale to enable you to understand, okay, something is wrong with my website, right? So it's pretty much test automation at scale, just testing your production system, right? With the motivation of really helping you to understand, okay, I need to act now, right? Versus, tons of other alerts and signals you're getting from, all the observability tools that you might have in place already, or maybe not have in place already. But, the number one problem that I'm trying to solve is, are your customers successful, right? And I want to tell you that, right? That's what we do with Shackley. Now, how did we came to the conclusion that that this is something we have to do? Actually, I became general manager at Source Labs when they acquired us in 2016. General manager in Europe, and if you want to be successful there, you have to find customers and have to generate revenue, right? And I recognize that quite fast, being in the journey. So what I focused on is, in the end, working with customers, helping with my sales team, and product team and marketing team in Europe, really getting customers onboarded, helping them to become successful. And I recognize pretty much two things. First of all, DevOps came, and what that shift meant is that out of a sudden there wasn't only QA involved in automation, frankly, right? And test automation. There were also developers deeply thinking about automation, sometimes operation people. And talking to lots of customers, I saw more and more developers being on the table and asking for tools which are optimized for their workflow. So I thought, like, okay, what we have here is, is decent, but maybe not good enough long time. What I also recognized is that lots of these customers were concerned about finding problems early, finding bugs, ideally on staging. But it's really hard to have a staging system which is production-like, which helps you to find end-to-end problems that you might face on production. So lots of our customers back then already thought, hey, let's apply this test automation suite to production and do actually monitoring, synthetic monitoring, right? So the tool wasn't optimized for that, but the customers used it this way. So I started to think about, okay, I mean, obviously there needs to be a tool which is made for developers, optimized for their workflow, integrated in their IDE, and really help them to to understand how their applications are doing on production, right? So and kept thinking about it while being at Source Labs, and I told you, I'm not very patient. So, and Source Labs became we were quite successful back then. So we became a larger ship, and, being the general manager on the ground in Europe, even though I was reporting to the CEO back then, I was the only exec in Europe. So I thought, like, okay, if I want to, move fast here, then I might do that, having my own company again. And coincidentally, I met Tim, my co-founder, and I met him by sorry, phone call. So coincidentally, I met Tim, my co-founder, and I pretty much recognized that that there was Tim doing Shackley as a side project by Googling, trying to find out, okay, is there someone who's solving that problem maybe in the early days already? Because I mean, in the end, in technology, if there is a real problem, and if I'm not the only one seeing that, then someone will do something about it. So I Googled, found out, okay, there's this Dutch guy working on a side project called Shackley, and coincidentally living away 2 kilometers from me in Poland. So I dropped him a line saying, hey Tim, let's have a coffee and talk. And, we kept talking. And to be honest with you, even though I thought like, okay, this is a problem which needs to get solved, the initial thinking was like, okay, let's take some time off. I thought like a year, because I also bought an old house back then, and thought, let's renovate it with my own hands, because I like to build things. Let's really just renovate it. So that was the initial plan. And then we kept talking for a while, for a quarter. And we both recognized, okay, Tim was looking for a co-founder, and thought, hey, maybe I can take my side project, which is generating, some dollars, but not a lot, to a full-time project, to a real business. And I kept thinking about it, and then we decided to do it together, 2020. Right. And so what Checkly is today is pretty much a mix of between what Tim saw back then and what I saw at Source Labs, combined. And it's really, we call it monitoring as code, because what we allow our customers to do is to have their monitoring setup configured in their code repository. Right. So imagine you're a developer, and your boss tells you, hey, you got to monitor that crucial service that you have just developed, or that API. Then, we allow developers to use the automation scripts and frameworks they know, called Playwright, and codify pretty much, or use Playwright scripts from within the repository and deploy them to Checkly. And after deploying them to Checkly, we're executing these scripts at scale, 24/7, in the frequency you want, and from within, right now, 21 different data centers worldwide. So it's actually, taking that core problem of, automation at scale, and really, making it reliable, making it really reliable, so that you can trust when that system calls you in the middle of the night. You can trust that this is not a false positive, but really a real problem, and that you should wake up, right, and really call an incident and start resolving that incident.
And this idea of having monitoring as code kind of came also from your background in Q&A, and like seeing that like normally you write your tests, your unit tests, and kind of put them in the code instead of having them external or separate from your application, which makes it harder to maintain, right?
Yes. We started Checkly actually with a code editor, and we still have a code editor, in the browser, so you can copy and paste your script, right? So, and the truth is, lots of customers are getting started this way, right? So even developers are testing Checkly out by getting a free trial in place, and creating their first check within the browser. But the question is really, how do you scale that, right? So if you want to have more than 5 checks, or monitor more than 5 APIs, and multiple websites, multiple transactions on your websites, then you might need 50 checks, 100 checks, maybe thousands or 10,000s of checks. And then the browser and copying code in the browser doesn't scale very well, right? So and there's a way to scale software development, which is pretty much code versioning, right? And what we did is we said, hey, okay, then let's allow customers to put the code in their code repository. And what that does is, on a very high level, it makes monitoring a team sport in a way, because all of a sudden multiple people can work on this kind of tool, right? So this automation, and it comes with all the benefits of code reviewing and having multiple versions of your scripts, and CI/CD. So really changing your monitors when your APIs are changing, etc., etc.
And from your perspective, you might be a bit biased there, but what is the observability stack that, like, let's say a normal SaaS company needs these days? Like, is it like your solution plus, I don't know, a Prometheus, or would you monitor, like looking at the cloud, like would you monitor your individual services still, or do you think it's just a check if your website is up, and then like an SMS notification or a call at night to inform you when it's down? Or what's your perspective here?
Yeah, I'm totally not biased, but so what I'm thinking. So what I'm thinking about is how to enable customers to get a very clear signal, right?
Yeah.
If their end users are able to do what they should do, right? Imagine you have an e-commerce shop, you want to enable your end users pretty much to buy your products, and if they can't buy your products, then you should wake up in the middle of the night, right? Imagine you're the same e-commerce shops and you have a Kubernetes, with lots of pods, etc. And, one of these servers is in the end, dying. That might not mean that you need to wake up in the middle of the night. That might mean that you need to act the next day or a week later, etc. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can accept that, right? So from time to time, that your service having a problem and need to reboot, right? So because there are other servers that might take over. Mm-hmm. So I think what you need first is an idea of how your website performs for your end users, and this is why we do checking. Mm-hmm. And then, do you also need all the other insights? Yes, right, to resolve incidents in the end. Right, to really understand, okay, there's something weird happening here with our API. What's actually happening in the backend, right? Is there a backend problem, etc.? So you might need, your observability stack to really figure out what the problem is there and to resolve that problem over time, right? And so I'm not saying you don't need observability tools. But the truth is, at 99% of the observability data, you will never have a look at, right? So, you're just saving it somewhere in a data lake, and, you hope that it becomes valuable or that you can find the issue. And, if you don't have lots of money, you might sample that data, and if you sample that data, imagine you have a customer that struggled, and you don't have that data available. So, that's a true problem, right? So that's what I'm thinking about, right? So it's not only, so the next evolution of Checkly is not only helping you to understand, that there's a problem, but really understand where the problem is coming from. So we connect to, Datadog, New Relic, and other services to help you correlate what we are seeing, right? We also enable our customers to send us their traces, right? So, but not all traces, the relevant traces, the traces which are relevant to resolve your incident, right? So imagine I'm calling you in the middle of the night, or my system is calling you in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., telling you, hey, there was a problem. What I want to do is also being able to tell you, hey, this problem is coming from, that database query, which was slow, right? So with OpenTelemetry, we have the possibility to add traces easily. So, we are helping our customers to do so. And now I'm calling you and pointing you to the trace where the problem is actually, where the root cause of the problem might be.
So the answer is you don't need Datadog, you don't need Prometheus necessarily, you only need Checkly then at the end, at least in the next iteration.
At the end, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So you're competing with quite big fishes, right? Like Datadog, etc. I guess there are like many companies attacking their positioning.
Yes.
I also think it's an interesting tool to have in the stack. Like if you mostly need it, if really something goes wrong, like let's take an APM, like the use case of an APM. You just need it really if things go really south, and you just need it for a very short time to optimize like short things typically, small things typically, and you pay it as if you would hire a developer.
Yes.
Looking at the price tag, so that's an interesting, more value-based pricing approach, right? But let's not talk about pricing. Let's rather talk about the problems that you're solving and also how you got there. So, if I get it correctly, then it's also very good, and your case solves the issue of the, let's say, the struggles you have between central people, like working in a company centrally, and dedicated teams. Is that what you also had in mind, or?
I don't know if that was the vision from the beginning on, right? So, but what we're seeing is, Checkly is used. The actual end user might be a developer, right? Might be an engineer. Really usually spending most of their time writing code. Interested in applying Checkly to a company might be, the central monitoring SRE team or a platform engineering team, right? They might be interested in, really making sure that that you detect problems fast, right? And an MTTD, as you would say, so mean time to detect problems, right? And so they might look for a tool that enables multiple teams to really provision monitoring and really understand what's going on, right? If there's an incident called, right? And so they're often looking at tools like Checkly or looking at Checkly and trying to find out, okay, how can I bring in a tool that my developers understand and that fit my modern DevOps process in a way. And we have, in the end, multiple personas working with Checkly, and also sometimes, even board members looking at the data that we're producing in the end. So for e-commerce businesses, or for, frankly, almost every company nowadays, which is a digital company, it's important to understand, okay, how, what's my reliability, what's my customer experience, etc. So sometimes even, board members are looking at the data, on a quarterly basis or something like that.
Yeah, I think the concept of service level indicators and objectives kind of slowly becomes mainstream, right? That it's about solving a customer problem together, and that it is meaningful to define how you want to make sure that your customer is successful, right?
Yeah, that's what we see across the board, right? So that's where we also see companies coming, with solutions, with homegrown solutions, maybe, and telling us, hey, we need a day to detect problems here, because our solution is not very scalable, and no one is looking at it because we have lots of false positives, and the developers don't like to work with it because they need to go into UI and click some tests together. So that's why we want to look at monitoring as code, and that's typical how a conversation with Checkly is starting, right? And usually you're right? Usually there's some management mandate to look at this data, right? So to really understand, hey, how is my customer experiencing the products that I'm developing?
And why did you take the monitoring approach instead of the testing approach? I mean, from my perspective, I have a hard time with front-end testing tools.
Yeah,
because they are mostly like I don't know, decoupled from engineering, and not working.
Yeah, we actually do both, right? So you could also execute checks against the staging environment as a test, right?
Yeah.
So we have these features, and the customers are using these features, right? So usually, so what we do is we help the whole engineering team. So which might use, Playwright for testing, and then also thinking about, okay, how can I apply what I'm already doing, writing tests here for monitoring? So not, do less pretty much and achieve, more, right? That kind of thinking feeds into what we do, right? So in the end, you could, you can use, and lots of customers are using, lots of our, more than 1,000 customers are doing testing and monitoring at the same time.
Do you believe, like, just a short check, like I recently had a podcast with Thomas Artman, the CTO of Linear, and we spoke about QA as well. Like, what's your perspective on QA? Like, does dedicated QA work at all?
That's a good question. So, I mean, I started my career, right? So with TestObject, talking to lots of dedicated QA teams, and what I've seen is at scale, they're slowing you down, right? So because, a dedicated team, a siloed team always means that, the developers are doing something, and then, the service is somehow, in a GA ready state, and then QA is taking over, right? So if it, is applied to the problems this way, then I think it's just, slower. And I'm a firm believer in cross-functional teams, to be honest, right? So let's have a development team with developers, with QA people, or developers focused on QA, maybe designers, etc., and let them work on on the problem, right? And that's what I believe in. You might, at scale, need people who are really tasked to write automation within their team. Fine, then do that. I really don't believe in siloed teams, to be honest.
Thomas went a bit further down the road and said he doesn't believe in that function at all in a team, like not even in a cross-functional team, but he only believed in, I think, product design and engineering, and said engineers are responsible for it. That's it. Period.
Yes, I could agree to it, right? So I really could agree. So best case, you convince your developers to write automation testing, right, or automated testing. Yeah.
Looking at your stack, as we don't only want to talk about your product, like, what is the hard thing you're experiencing with your stack? Like, what were the important decisions you took early, even though you're not the CTO but the CEO? What are the hard problems you have and you're solving?
Yeah. I think our core is executing customer code at scale, very reliable. In 21, maybe in the future, 50 different locations worldwide, right? That means our infrastructure needs to be, optimized for that. Needs to make sure that these scripts are running, have the resources they need at runtime, and are not failing because of a noisy neighborhood problem or something like that, because there maybe 10 other scripts executed on the same machine at the same time, etc. So that's a hard problem that we're solving constantly, right? So we have an infrastructure team that is pretty much focused on this task. So make it very reliable at scale, faster, always faster. The faster you get a signal that you have a problem, the better it is. And in the end, also make it affordable, right? So we're thinking a lot about how to make automation at scale affordable, because in the end we want to earn money, right? And want to accomplish a certain margin. So that's what we do in the core of our system, and then we are producing by executing millions of these scripts per month, or hundreds of millions of these scripts per month. generating lots of data, right? So we have ClickHouse, which we use for analytics, and then we have a PostgreSQL, which is pretty much doing the rest, and which we also always looking at, trying to understand how to scale that.
Okay, but it also doesn't sound, I mean, most stacks these days are kind of standard, right? Like you have Kubernetes, you run like large workloads in Docker containers, I assume. So, I mean, problems are solved, but still it's the combination of like a boring tech stack and really like pushing it far.
I wouldn't say if I agree to boring tech stack.
Yeah, it's kind of standard, right?
Yeah,
like you don't need necessarily, I don't know, cockroach DB or whatever. Like back in the days, like let's say take a step back, like 5-10 years ago, like everyone was into that and had to have the NoSQL stack, etc. Now, for me, it's just I don't know, Postgres, Kubernetes, and in your case, like very smart worker execution, I guess.
Yes, and some queues in between, right? So lots of queues in between, which are distributing the work. That's it, right? So I think actually ClickHouse is very cool, and it helped lots of companies to do the analytics at scale easier. I mean, you could have accomplished that with PostgreSQL kind of 10 years ago already. But, now, it just enables us to have a 40 people team and not a 150 people team solving these kind of issues.
Mm. Yeah, it's actually a lot of fun to see how stable technology got in that area, right? Like, I don't know, Postgres, Redis, whatever, I don't know what you're using for workers, ClickHouse, etc. It's super solid, and you don't need much more, right?
Yes. I mean, it's great to see that technology is there to do what we do at scale. For thousands of customers. I mean, I'm coming from mobile testing. So we operated, thousands of mobile devices at scale in data centers. And, these iPhone devices, they're just not optimized to be operated at scale and, running test automation 24/7. It was a different challenge back then. So way harder challenge. I think, now with what we do for monitoring, I think it's still a very hard challenge to make sure that you're, not waking up someone in the middle of the night because there's a false positive. Something is wrong in your network or in your Kubernetes or etc. So it's really, really hard problem, but it's not as hard as it was kind of 10 years ago. Yeah.
Like these days, you kind of think in voting mechanisms and think in standards, which back then were still not yet there, right? Not really invented.
Yes.
And besides that, I guess I don't know, you're fully on TypeScript or something because, like, obviously Playwright.
Yes. Yeah. We're a Node.js shop. Yes, 100%. That's it, pretty much. So it's 100% Node.js at the moment. Obviously, we think about optimizations there, right? So can we introduce some Go, etc., to execute faster on the worker level, etc. But it's not the case yet.
Okay. And if I imagine your team, 40 people, means that most likely you kind of spun off if you look at engineering, spun off the worker stuff from the rest, or do you, I don't know, differentiate between front end and back end or something? Or
we differentiate between features that we have, right? So we have a team working on the core synthetics that we have. Then we have a team working on the platform, right, below all other teams in the infrastructure, and a team thinking about how to give customers more insights into what actually went wrong. So Checkly Traces is a product that came out of that team, and then we're just spinning up or spawn up an enterprise team that helps enterprise customers to with all all the things they need, right? So permission management, etc.
Okay. Interesting. So that is an engineering team working on enterprise customers' problems.
Yes. There are some features that are more important when you have hundreds of users on a platform, right? And then these features need to be implemented by someone, right? So and we think that's a dedicated team that should do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understood. Like looking back, what were the 3 important things that you, let's say 3, that you learned since you founded Checkly, and which you wouldn't do, or which you would have loved having learned before?
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. So what did I learn at Checkly? First of all, as a second-time founder, you always think it's so much easier to found your second business. I think it's not, right? So the expectations are just larger, right? So I mean, having worked for a company that had hundreds of paying customers before, and then you're starting from scratch. It's kind of tough, right? So would have loved to tell myself, hey, pace yourself. Again, goes back to my patience levels, But so that's something I would have loved to know. And then I'm actually glad that we kept the customer focus. I mean, it sounds probably everyone is saying that, right? So, but I'm telling even, my operations and people operations people from time to time, to jump into customer calls and just listen to the conversations or listen to the recordings that we have, etc., so that everyone knows, what the customers are thinking about our product, etc. And, glad that I did that. I don't know if that, the learning is probably, hey, this is important, right? So, in the end, customers are paying our bills and paying our salary, and we have to have some kind of level of dedication. I'm not a big believer in these, in these buzzwords of being customer dedicated or obsessed, etc. In the end, it might be that in a way, but I'm just not calling it customer obsessed, right? As an organization,
Things with names, right?
Yes. And then, third learning is we started Checkly as a bottoms up PLG business, and it's still a bottoms up PLG business. So, but larger customers are coming to us saying, hey, okay, we need a more volume or more people on the platform, and that means someone needs to talk to them, and usually you as a founder. And, I was my co-founder, Timo, did that for a while, and then, that didn't scale anymore. So in the end, you end up, hiring people, which are called sales, right? And account executives. And, you're actually doing sales, even though having, a PLG business. So it's it's interesting, right? So I was quite religious of never onboarding, a large sales team anymore. And, the truth is we're kind of stumbling into it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like product led as a buzzword as well, right? It logically ends somewhere, right? Like you logically want to move up the road and aim for bigger accounts, help bigger customers solve different problems instead of staying on that level normally. And yeah, it would be foolish to not, I don't know, also move there, right? So like do what your customers want at a certain point.
Yeah. Do you want to say no to one of the top banks in the world? So, this is a hard decision to make, right? So just saying, no, we can't help you. I'm in the end, interested to, help customers do business, and this means, hey, okay, then you got to figure out who's doing that. And, Yeah, in the end, product-led, what does product-led mean for me? Right. So first of all, I think the product needs to convince customers. So what we told today, even if a customer comes not having tried the product yet, right, comes to us, right? So usually, 99% of our customers are coming to us inbound. But then we still try to convince them to prove to run a proof of concept and really try to get them onboarded ASAP, like a minute after we had the first call with them, right? And even more, we try to provision checks for them even before the first call, right? So that we can show them the product, and because this is in the end what we're selling. And you gotta, show that, and then the customer should test drive it, right? So if you would sell a Tesla, then of course, you should test drive it before, right? And experience it. And if you have a great experience, you might be intrigued to, put your credit card in or ask for an invoice, right? And this is what we're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Hannes, for your learnings. What is the, let's say, recent hottest shit that you discovered? Like anything like technically fascinating, any tool that makes your day so much better, anything you annoy all your friends with because you're telling them on and on how great that is, like anything that pops to your mind?
I was recently test driving a Waymo, right, in San Francisco. So one of these fully autonomous cars, and there was a great experience, to be honest, right? So because that's really next level technology, right, applied to a real use case, right? So I love my car, but really being able to sit in the car, and the car is going through the city, driving you where you want to be, fully autonomous, and actually smoother than any Uber driver in San Francisco would ever do. That was quite an experience, and I'm telling my team about it. So it's not the latest software, etc., right? But this is really, the number one experience I had, recently.
I actually was fooled by someone when I bought or leased a car 4 years ago, and actually bought a full self-driving package with the car, which never started working in Germany.
But package too.
And the question is now, like, if you're leasing end, would you buy it again? Because there are stories about next year finally being the year of full self-driving in Europe, right?
I don't know. Seeing all the technologies that a Waymo car has on board, I don't know if if the car you're talking about and I'm talking about kind of is able to be a full self-driving car. I just don't know, right? So we will see, and time will tell us. But would I believe that story as I believed it 3 years ago? Probably not, right? So yeah.
You would be more skeptic. So
I probably would buy a Waymo, huh? If it's ever available for private customers
in Berlin. So I spoke to your co-founder, and he actually told me a little surprise that you guys have in the company. It's a little annotation in your DSL or in your Playwright setup, which you can use to basically travel back in time. It's an Easter egg called Time Machine. You just have to add a comment time machine and then a year and a person. And now imagine that we now use this feature that your co-founder built in and physically travel back in time into the year 2004 when you worked as consultant and software developer for a company called Puma C Technologies. We observe yourself like building software for luxury jets, etc. back then. And now you have the chance to whisper something into young Hannes' ears. What would it be?
It's probably get started with your own company faster, right? And think bigger, think on a global scale earlier, because what I did throughout the last years is developing software and selling software, and really, it took me quite a while to recognize that, that this is a global market, and that millions of developers have, similar problems, etc. And, that solving a problem for one might mean that there are 10,000 others that have a similar problem, and that, you need to let them know about having that tool, right? So it's not only, so in the end, it's not only, writing and shipping software. It's also about, bringing it to the market, kind of, letting customers know about it, or letting potential customers know about it, etc. And I think, would have loved to have that knowledge earlier, pretty much, right? So what you can do from living within Berlin, and really, helping customers in Japan, China, and USA, I wouldn't say I'm sitting in the office all day long. I'm actually flying a lot, next week to New York again, etc. But, really, there's, lots of developer problems to be solved. And if you can solve the problem for one, then you can probably solve it for multiple people, and just need to talk about it, pretty much. I would have loved to have that experience maybe earlier.
That understanding, right? Like, this is a global market, and this scales globally straight away, right? Yeah.
That wasn't. Yeah,
it's like looking at it from today's perspective, it's super simple, right? And super logic, but it wasn't always like that. For me, at least.
At least not for me. Maybe for others it is, but for me it wasn't.
So, Hannes, thanks a lot for your insights and time. Really looking forward to publish this episode and maybe physically meet in Berlin at a certain point for lunch or dinner or whatever.
Thank you, Tobias.
And everyone out there, just try his product.
That's a great recommendation. We have a free trial. Tobias, thank you. That was fun. And let's meet in, either Berlin or Hamburg or somewhere else soon.
Thank you for listening to the Alphalist podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about, or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. Alphalist is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on Alphalist, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.